Hey Instagram. Happy Wednesday. I just got back from my 2-day trip. For those of you that were following, we went to Ojai, California for my anniversary. It's been 4 years and it was a beautiful, beautiful trip. And I just got back. So I'm in that transition stage when you get home from a trip, and it was beautiful. It's beautiful up there. If anyone's ever in California, hi guys, welcome. Please go up to Ojai. It is stunning. We rode around on the bikes going to town. It was beautiful, stunning hills, and it's just gorgeous. So get away for a couple of days. Highly recommend it. Changes your mindset, changes your state. It's amazing. I am going to, I don't have my things with me. 1 second. I've got to get questions. You guys put in so many questions and I left it somewhere. 1 second. Sorry. That's not good. It's so funny. Where did I put it? Yes, there they are. Okay. That is fine. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so we are going to speak about some questions that you guys put in that are really, really great. Submitted. Any questions I don't get to each week on the question box that I do a response on story, I will answer on the live. And then if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. Because usually if you have a question, there's at least, 20 people that really want to know the answer to that question that will listen to it at least. So let's get to them because there's quite a few. And I don't always get through them all. So, is it picky to say no if you're not attracted to your date? No, it's absolutely not picky to say no. However, the caveat is that you need to allow enough time to see if there could be an attraction. And that's what people don't do. They run. As soon as they feel like it's not instantly what they think it should be, or it's not the image in their head of who they think they should be with, which is more of a problem, and that happens a lot, right? Like this doesn't match the fantasy in my head of what I thought my significant other would be like. That's a problem because you're not really giving it a chance. You're wanting reality to match the fantasy, and the fantasy might not be accurate. It might not be totally the whole picture. You might be judging people based on a look rather than what you actually need. You might be basing things too superficially. If anyone watched the Jewish Matchmaker show on Netflix, it was a whole joke about Danny because it was all about the brows. He's got to have perfect brows. Now that's obviously a very specific thing and it's a very superficial thing. So that's not at all what's going to make her happy, and that's not at all values driven. So we want to make sure that looks are important. Looks are important. Chemistry is important. You absolutely should not marry anyone, in case there's any confusion, if there's not a lot of chemistry and you're not attracted, okay? Even though I hear that sometimes it will grow in marriage and whatever, you cannot, in my humble opinion, walk down the aisle if you're not attracted to your partner. So how long should you give it? How long do you give this kind of attraction? Because there's definitely two types of attraction. There is the instant attraction, which is like chemistry, electricity, weak at the knees, oh my gosh, like I get butterflies, like all of that, which is what we all think chemistry should be, is really driven by Hollywood and by this, in a sense, anxious attachment style, right? There's an anxious attachment style of like, oh, he didn't notice me and then he noticed me, and there's this electric kind of connection, but that's really driven from a wound of anxious attachment. And that level of electricity and hooking you in, like kind of fell in love, that is falling into your old wounds. That's what really falling in love means. Like falling in love, like kind of against my will. It just came over me. It took over me. Like I had no control around it. We just instantly knew that we knew each other forever. Like that was so familiar. So most of the time, not all the time, most of the time, that familiarity is hooking you into an old wound. Okay? Sorry to burst your bubble, but it's so much more important that you learn this now than be in that relationship and get married and then wake up and say, oh my gosh, how did I get here, right? You're not looking for instant electricity. However, there is a deeper type of attraction that is important, that is more healthy, because that intensity and that instability is not healthy. And that usually feels familiar because there's something about it that was familiar from when I grew up. Something about this dynamic reminds me of something that I remember or that was familiar, even if the details are different. And what we want to look for is we want to go out, think he's cute, think he's maybe neutral, like not cute, but not bad. Okay, he's nice looking, but nothing. I know like 3 friends who are married, happily married to guys like this, where this is how they started. And I was living with them at the time in Israel. So I remember them coming back from each date going, nice guy, no real reason I should stop, and like nothing really compelling me, but like I had a nice time and no reason not to go out, right? As Eliza says, date him till you hate him. I'm doing a live with Eliza Ben Shalom on June 25th. So stay tuned. We're going to post about it, I think, next week. But date him till you hate him. Meaning, if there's no reason not to go out, keep going out, right? So this idea of, should I end it just suddenly if I'm not attracted? Is it too picky? It may be, right? But you want to give it the chance to see. So what does that mean? And what does it feel like to have this healthy attraction? It feels like, well, I came back from a second date. He was really nice, still, nothing overwhelming, but just really nice. And we talked a lot about life. And third date, well, he was really sweet tonight. Like I really noticed he remembered something I said from date 1, and I felt really like thought about, and he was sensitive. And then date 4, well, actually he was really caring when I shared something that was hard for me. And like, I don't know, I felt like kind of warm inside, Date 5, wow, he really looked cuter tonight for some reason. I don't know why. It slowly builds this kind of attraction that's from the heart, that's from the depth, that's not from your old subconscious hooks. This attraction builds, and it builds over time, and it slowly grows. Imagine like logs burning, right? Over time, it's sustainable rather than a quick spark and then it's intense and then it dies out. So someone asked earlier just before, what about if you're completely turned off? So no, that's what I call being repelled or repulsed. If you're repelled or you're repulsed, you absolutely should end it the first date. Like after a first date, if you're like, ew, if there's any sense of you that's like, ew, repelling away, it's very hard to overcome that. It's very hard. So even if they're a great guy on paper, and if you're feeling a visceral repelling away, you can trust that and end it. One and done, we call it, right? One and done. But if there's not that, if it's neutral, many people have this experience where it's neutral. Okay, neither here nor there. Like the problem is you don't want to stay on that superficial zone of going round and around in that fake chit chat zone, which is so draining. And so in order to get out of that zone, you want to be able to share real things. You want to be able to show up and be authentic. You want to share imperfections. You want to talk about emotionally loaded topics like, what are your dreams? What's something about your past that was challenging, but nothing too big, not too big too soon, right? Just do something small. Wait till they reciprocate. You want to also talk about your hopes, your passions, your desires, what your idealism is about the world. Like, positive, passionate, emotion-driven topics will connect you in a more real way. Other things as well as circumstance. So are you just sitting opposite each other at a restaurant, at a dinner, and you can't really look away because you feel rude? So you have to kind of be locked in. Like if you've done too many Zoom calls, that's how you feel, right? Because you have to focus on the camera. That's how I feel anyway. I see like 8 clients a day, and you're focused in on it. And that intensity is also not real. Like when you go out with anyone else in your whole life, that's not how it is. So you want to be able to make sure you're doing other experiences, activities, hobbies, anything like that, rather than just interrogation mode over a date, over a table, right? Okay, you have one drinks, or you have one coffee, or you have one lunch or meal like that. But then after that, get out of there. Go to museums, do walking around, go and do some sort of hobbies or some sort of show or something. Do something else that is more relaxed, right? So you can relax around each other. So you can feel if there's an attraction, or that could be an attraction there. It's very hard to relax and feel connected when you're kind of like this and feel like you're being interrogated with questions. So tell me about this and tell me about that and tell me about that. No, that's not how you build connection. Connection has to be organic. And the hard thing is in the Jewish world, when you get set up, it's sort of like the opposite of organic because it's a blind date. And so you're on a blind date in kind of a fake circumstance, and now be organic and see if there's a connection. It's so hard. So don't do it to yourself. I'm all for Shabbat meals, meeting people at Shabbat meals or different dinners or other events or organically. Obviously, if that's not your thing, it's not your thing. But I think it's healthier and easier as long as you do get some sort of person that can check in. Again, not everyone does, but it helps. It really does help early on in the process to have that third person whether it's a shadchan or a family friend or something like that. So hopefully that answers your question. 2 types of attraction. There's the warm, healthy, build slowly attraction, which is what we want. And there's the electricity, Hollywood. Oh my gosh, it's more like anxious attachment, right? Like, he didn't look at me, he did look at me, he wants me, he doesn't want me. And then like he acts all avoidant and unavailable. And then the last minute he realizes he loves her and she's already left. And she says, I can't do this. I need more than this. This is not good for me. And she walks away. And the last minute he realizes he loves her and he races to the airport and he stops her before she gets on the plane. And we're all like, whoa, that's so romantic. That's so amazing. No, that's anxious avoidant attachment. It is not healthy because they're going to play that dance out through the rest of their lives, which we don't see on Hollywood because that's where it ends. And we think it's happily ever after. So we've been conditioned to believe in the Hollywood ideal of avoidant, anxious attachment, living happily ever after. No, it is very difficult to live like that. Can it work? Yes. Can people work through their avoidant and their anxious attachment? Absolutely, right? Avoidance mean I'm independent. I don't really need as much connection. I like my independence to stay safe. And then I like some intimacy, but then I like my independence. And the anxious attachment is whenever the avoidant pulls back, she's like, what are you doing? Are you withdrawing? Are you distancing? Is there an abandonment thing there? I'm nervous, right? So I'm nervous and she needs reassurance and that just pushes him away further. He goes for the hills running, right? No, I'm not into this. And so that's where you get like that cool, calm, collected, unavailable type that women chase after in the hope that they're going to transform the guy to be suddenly showing up. And of course they don't. And so then they finally feel abandoned and despondent and end it and say like, I can't do this anymore. And then that's when he wakes up. Why? Because that is the dance of intimacy. There's a certain distance that couples need to create, to sustain, to have this certain dance, certain intimacy. And when one's chasing the other, anxiously reassure me, the avoidance freak out. Oh my gosh, too much, too close, too threatening. I've got to withdraw. I've got to become avoidant. I'm avoiding you. I'm withdrawing. So that feels, what do you mean? Now you're being neglectful. You don't love me. How could you do this? I need more reassurance. I'm going to keep chasing. And he's going, I'm running away. And some point there's a dance as she pulls back and says, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I deserve better. I need more intimacy than this. This is not normal, right? Her version of normal versus his version of normal. Again, it's not always that the woman's anxious and the man's avoidant. It's just very typical. So she pulls back and says, okay, I'm done. And then there's too big a distance, right? They haven't maintained their dance of intimacy, of the level of intimacy they both subconsciously feel comfortable with. Meaning maybe she grew up with unavailable men around her on some level, emotionally loved her, but just emotionally not so present and available because of how they were raised. So it's not about blame and judgment, it's just about acknowledgement. So as she backs off, he freaks out and goes, what do you mean? And he starts to chase. So that's when she ends it and she starts, I'm out of here. I'm going to catch my flight home. See you later. Goes there in Hollywood. Oh my gosh, I love her. And he goes chasing after her. And then we think it's happily ever after, but this dance of intimacy will continue where one backs off and the other chases and the other backs off and the other chases until both of you can see that dance and work on it. Work on what comes up for you when there's more intimacy that's created than what feels comfortable. Work on what comes up. I feel suffocated. I feel scared. I feel I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be hurt. I'm going to be rejected. We want to work through those wounds because they're the wounds coming up from childhood. If you're interested in this idea as well, Harville Hendricks, Getting the Love You Want, is a very interesting book about how subconsciously we attract partners that are like our caregivers, right? Or a blend of some kind of caregiver, mom, dad, connected, some form, even though you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's absolutely not what I want necessarily. So, but subconsciously it's familiar. So what happens is we subconsciously attract someone who is like the patterns, the emotional patterning of a caregiver. And then we get to replay the wounds from the childhood in the marriage to be able to heal from them. Because as an adult now we can heal, whereas as a child we couldn't. Is it making sense? Is this making sense? So then what you want to do is be able to work that through in marriage, and then you become more whole. Now, most people have no idea about that. They wake up inside the marriage at some point and go, what the heck? How did I get someone like this? This is not what I thought I was marrying. There must have been a mistake. That's what often happens, but it's not a mistake. It's part of your tikkun. Tikkun means soul correction, fixing, healing, what you're here on the planet to become more whole through, right? And marriage is a vehicle to do that. It's not an end goal in itself. I'm going to get married and now I'm done. I'm good. All right. How to heal from an ex when you share a deep connection. I get honestly questions daily about exes. And it's so important because there's no point in dating if you're not really over your ex. Okay, so if you think of him, if you're comparing other guys to him or other dates to him, if you are, or vice versa, if you're a man watching, if you are subconsciously just compare, like he's the bar, right? And so you think that's it. And then anyone who doesn't come close to that type of ease of connection, you think is, it just doesn't cut it. So there's a problem with that, meaning you're not with your ex. The ex ended. That's why it's an ex. So something there is not right for you. It did not work. It was not good for you. And what we like to do is we take out parts of different people and we say, I want a guy with that aspect of that guy. But it's not realistic because you get a whole package. So if a guy, let's say, is really good at being present, and he just gives you so much presence and he's just with you and being present and he's amazing, he might be flaky. He might be flaky. He might not be so driven in career. He might not be so productive or accomplished in that way, but he's really present. He's really good with people. So now you're on a date with a guy who's a really, really successful businessman or really productive, but he's not as present. He's distracted with his phone. Okay, you shouldn't have phones on dates, but you know what I'm saying? Like he needs to check. He's looking around the room and you're like, oh, I wish he was like, what's his name? Joe, who was so present. But what you didn't realize is the reason you broke up with Joe is because he was unstable on some level, because he didn't provide you with a sense of the fact that he could take care of you and look after a family and, was successful. He wasn't someone you respected necessarily. You didn't look up to him because he wasn't really so accomplished. And this guy in front of you is so accomplished, but he doesn't have the presence of Joe. So there's always a package deal. You're always going to choose a guy with a set of strengths, and he's going to have a mirroring set of weaknesses, and every person has that. And so you have to really ask yourself, what can I live with? What weaknesses can I live with? What flaws can I live with in someone? What can I handle? Rather than, oh my gosh, I see that he does this, this, and this. Flag, red flag. Everyone jumps to the red flag. It's not necessarily red flag. It could be a flaw, but like, what can I live with? And whenever I ask my clients this, like, what flaws can you live with? They don't like to answer. They don't know. Make a list of the flaws that you can live with and the flaws that you can't live with, right? So certain people can't live with anger. Other people who are more fiery and spicy and passionate, they can handle the anger. Like someone with a temper, not abuse. Or, like someone who is super punctual, can't handle someone who's late. They just cannot stand it, right? But they can handle someone who is a screamer, or someone who is lazy, someone who is messy, let's say. But timing, that's too difficult. So you got to know. You've got to know, because you have flaws, and your partner, spouse, husband is going to live with your flaws. So how to heal from an ex. Sorry, I got sidetracked. How to heal from an ex. Because if you don't, you're not emotionally available. That's where we got to, right? You're not really emotionally available. So how to heal from an ex. Couple things. I have a whole guide, how to heal from an ex. If you need it, just DM me EXX and I'll send it to you. Number one, you want to remember why this didn't work. Why did it not work with your ex? Like really, really why? Yeah, write that down. And keep a couple friends in the loop about this too, because it's good for them to reflect it back to you if you forget. Because usually what we do is go back to the amazing memories and we forget all the reasons why we broke up. So why did you break up? Why did this not work? Write it out. Really, really write it out. Number two, what lessons did you learn personally from the process of this relationship? Like, what did you learn about yourself with this? And what will you want to do differently in the next relationship? That's super important, right? What did you learn? Write it out. Number three, did you really say goodbye to this guy? Or are you still in touch with him? You're still friends, which is not possible. Meaning once you've been intimate with someone in that type of way, to just backpedal, put a boundary and say, we're friends. Like, it just is a lie, because you've crossed that boundary already. So you can pretend to put a boundary there, but you know each other far more than that. So it doesn't work, right? Even emotional intimacy, it doesn't work. Because you know each other and you long for that on some level. So if you're still checking all his social medias, if you're in touch in some way, stop it. Stop being in touch. Get rid of it. Block him. He won't know. Just block him out of your phones, out of your socials. Get rid of it. Take down any photos. Box it up. Tape it up. Put the box outside. Don't have photos and things you can go through to reconnect with the idea of who that person is and what the relationship was, because you'll only see it with a part of a picture. It's skewed. It's not the whole picture. Right? Because the whole picture is you broke up. So the reality was that whatever good was there was not enough to counterbalance the reasons why you're not together. And we forget that. That's the problem. We forget it when we don't allow ourselves to move on. We stay stuck on the positive, forget the negative, or forget why it didn't work, the incompatibility, let's say. You must do that. Get rid of everything. Number 4, you have to write him a goodbye letter and grieve it. That's what people usually avoid. Write a goodbye letter and grieve that relationship. Literally write goodbye to all the little cute jokes and things you had in common, and looks and sayings and songs and all the things that you would normally, you can bawl your eyes out, cry, let it out, say goodbye, knowing that you're saying goodbye to make space for the right one, right? So once you've written that letter, I want you to burn it and surrender it to higher power, God. Yeah, give it up to a higher power. The last one then is I want you to really visualize what you do want. What kind of relationship do you want? What do you want? Really let yourself visualize that. And then finally, you want to surrender that picture to a higher power as well. Like that's also up to you, right? Like I don't have control of that, but this is what I want. And really allow yourself to feel it as if you already have that new relationship, because then you're creating a resonance for that new relationship, and then you surrender it to God as well. So that's really the process for letting go of an ex, and really doing those with serious and intention, and being able to want to let it go even though it's hard. Like it can be the most right thing to end a relationship and extremely painful at the same time, and both of those are right, if that makes sense. Okay, I'm just checking. Oh, any questions? Any questions? Hi guys. Oh, that's so funny. The plot of not another teen movie. That's hilarious. Okay. All right. So what are some, when a person says no, when a person says no after a one and done. No. When a person says no after a one and done, does that mean they don't take dating seriously? No, it just means they know with clarity the first date that you're not the one for them. And that actually could be a good thing because it's not wasting your time. And so if someone else says no after a one and done, then you just want to say, thank God I'm off the hook in trying to decide that one. That was decided for me, and I am going to move on. And thank God they got clarity before I did that I'm not the right one. And that's it. That's all the rejection is, right? The rejection is not of you personally. It's just they got clarity first. If it's not that and this person has issues and that's why he's so picky and perfectionistic, or she is, or whatever, then okay, so be it. It's still not the right one for you. This is a hard one. I ended things with him because something felt off, but it's so hard without him. Did I do right? Did I do the right thing? I can't tell you that because I don't know. I would need to know a lot more about the situation, right? But again, something felt off. You want to be careful with that. If something feels off, what does that mean? That could be your fear. That could be your anxiety. And that's not about him. It's about you. So we want to make sure my feeling of feeling off, like when is it my gut versus when is it my insecurity? I get that question a lot too. When is it my gut feeling versus when is it my insecurity? Really important. So you don't know sometimes immediately, although gut feeling is a sense, and you can only feel your gut feeling if you're not scared or worried or anxious. So if you're scared or worried or anxious about something, right, with the date, like I'm feeling too nervous and I'm worried he's not going to like me and I'm all like that, you can't feel your gut feeling. You can't feel it because the gut sits underneath that and it's like a sense. It's not an emotion. So you can't trust that, okay? So then you need to keep going out. You need to keep going out and getting more information. So let's say you are anxious about something objectively and you share it with him and then he responds positively towards you with that, right? So he responds positively with you and then it doesn't get rid of your anxiety at all, then it's your anxiety. It's not him. So you want to bring up, you want to firstly see what your anxiety is about. Is it something relevant that's between you? Or is it just in your head and you're making it up and you're creating it, but there's nothing in the present moment that's giving you that information and that feedback about why you should be so anxious? And that anxiety is really something you're bringing in from the past, right? About your anxiety with this guy. So when something feels off, you want to explore where is that coming from? What feels off? If you don't know, it's worth going out until you have some information, unless you really, really trust your gut. I did this a lot. I dated a lot of guys. I would get a gut feeling. But I wouldn't be able to quantify it with my language. So I would keep going out until I could give it some words and like why that gut was off. After about like 50 of those, right? God forbid you won't have to date so many. But after 50 of those types of experiences, then I trusted my gut. So you want to listen for that, right? You want to just make sure that things align rather than just go off a knee-jerk gut feeling. Knee-jerk gut feelings are usually not gut feelings if they are really a feeling, right? As opposed to a sense, like when you walk into a room and you're like, ugh, something feels off. Something feels off here. And it's like a contraction, but it's not anxiety. It's very different to anxiety. So just check that it's not anxiety versus feeling off. Okay, a couple questions. Wolfson, are you related to the Wolfsons I know? How do you keep yourself from taking on your family's negative opinions, judgments, especially when they play to your insecurities? Oh, that's a great one. Yes. So it depends. It depends on if their negative opinions and judgments are really true about this situation, let's say, right? If it's just in general hassling you about being single and like it's never going to happen and you're never going to get married, and all you have to ask yourself, and this is really a great qualifier, guys, for who to listen to when you're single, because this is one of the biggest challenges and stresses for singles is who to listen to. I just spoke for an hour to someone today about that. Like he listens to everyone as a man, listen to everyone and all these opinions, etc. And if you just ask yourself this question, you will have crystal clear clarity about whether you should listen to this voice of the person, even if they're close to you, even if they're family. This question will help you discern whether you should listen to them. And that is, if I listen to this voice, this line of questioning, this person who's saying these things to me, their opinions, if I listen to these opinions, where will it take me? Will it take me to a place of being motivated, wanting to make myself better, wanting to grow? Like, let's say they are talking about some aspect of truth. Or will it make me feel like a piece of dirt? And it's just fueling my fear. It's just fueling my own negativity. It's just fueling my despair. If it's fueling your despair and fueling your negativity and fueling your anxiety and all the what ifs, and it's fueling your fear, guess what? You shouldn't listen to it. It's a voice of self-sabotage or sabotage from someone else, from their fears. We call it Yetzer Hara from the Jewish perspective. That is the voice of the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is an inclination we all have inside of us to self-sabotage, to keep us small, to stop us growing, to give up. All of those voices we have inside of us, and we have them outside of us, right? Because everyone else has that too going on inside of them. So if they're getting, I've dealt with many mothers of girls dating in their 20s, and the mother is more anxious than the girl, putting pressure on the girl, freaking out. The mother's freaking out that the girl's not going to get married. And I'm trying to work with the young woman to build her sense of self so she can date from the best place possible. And the mother keeps on doing that work. I have to tell the mother, back off. This is your fear. And go and you deal with God. You go and deal with your own trust in God. God's got a plan for your daughter. You don't have to freak out all the time. And your freak out makes her feel not her best self, and then she can't date from her best self. Okay? It's a huge problem. Maybe we should do a whole live on that, right? Like parents of singles and how to work with the singles and the parents together. But I don't think the parents are watching. So, but if you're the single watching, you have to be kind of discerning, even with your own family who love you. They might be too close to you to be able to help you. And so you want to make sure you get some outside mentors to be able to, listen to and guide you that are not anxiety driven about your own dating, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. And how do you do it internally? So like, this is all good advice, but like, how do you actually do it? I imagine it like a yapping chihuahua tied to a tree, yap, 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 and you walk on past it, right? So you can't get rid of the voice. And you can't get rid of a voice if it's from a family member that loves you, but you can sort of give it less power, so to speak. You can give it less power. So imagine it tied to a tree, and then it's there. You know it's there, but you're not looking at it and engaging it. You're just walking straight on past, right? Now, if it's a family member you have to speak to, I hear you, Mom. I hear you, Dad. I get it. I hear you. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to buying time's very good. I'm going to talk about it with my dating coach or my mentor, whoever it is. And that's it. Don't get into it, right? Don't get into it. Or you need to push back and set a boundary, which is like, when you speak in this way, it only fuels anxiety for all of us, and it's not helpful. So what I would prefer is blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So that's the hardest thing, is standing up and setting boundaries to your parents, because you actually need to be able to do that to get married, ironically. You know, it says in Jewish wisdom that we have to leave our parents' house in order to cleave as one flesh, which really means individuate, actualize. It doesn't just mean physically leave your parents' house. It means become your own person. And when you're your own person with your own sense of self inside, and you're not always dependent on mom and dad's approval or disapproval, right? The disapproval doesn't send you reeling, and their approval isn't all you want. But, right, if they're disappointed, you can handle it. Like, it's okay if you've made a different decision. That's called being your own person, not being governed by your parents' opinions. Like, you can take it seriously. You can listen to them. You should, with respect. But you don't have to give them all the power, which is what we did as kids. You want to be your own person, take it seriously, make your own decision. And then it says you're ready to cleave as one flesh, be one with someone else. Without that process, you are stunted, you are enmeshed, you are limited, you are undeveloped. You need to develop that ability to set boundaries for yourself with respect, with taking what they say very seriously. Of course, everyone wants their parents' approval and wants them to like whoever they're dating and marrying for sure. But you want to be able to be your own person with your own separate sense of self. So I hope that's helpful in some way. Your partner. So if it's your partner that's giving you negative opinions and judgments, you need to push back, and you need to say, honey, the way you're speaking to me is not helping me. And we have to work on communication, because even if you're correct, it makes me feel bad and terrible and like I want to give up. So this sounds more like a communication style thing than the actual issue itself. Okay. Realize that all issues dating-wise have to do with my self-conscious confidence and self-love. Yes. Thank you, Razel. Thank you for being so honest and so real, because that is all the work that I do, is this. You're not even going to believe that nearly every single person I work with has self-worth, self-trust, clarity as their goals, right? Every person's the same and realizes that's what's been limiting them in their dating. So can you recommend any Jewish writing to improve and speed up this work? Yes. There is a book. Do I have it here? Practical Inner Torah. Practical Inner Torah, which is Miriam Milhauser Castle, I think it is. She writes amazing work. And Your Awesome Self by, is it in here? Is it? Oh, yeah, Your Awesome Self. I can't remember the name. It's Ginsberg, I think. Your Awesome Self. And what else on self-love and self-confidence, self-conscious self-confidence? I think they're good ones. There's a book called Letting Go. It's a bit heavier, but it's really important about processing your feelings. Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender by David Hawkins. Actually, there's a book list. Yes, Your Awesome Self, Practical Inner Torah. Thank you. There's a book list on one of my reels, and I put in 5 books for that. But Practical Inner Torah is amazing, and a lot of that work I do in my course. And I found the book afterwards, and I was like, this is amazing. It's all written out already. Excuse the tapping of the nails from my dog. Okay, amazing. I'll do one more question, and then I'll jump off. If you have any others, please put them in. You're welcome. How long should you give for attraction to grow? So we talked all about different types of attraction before. How long should you give it? Definitely more than 3 dates. Like definitely 1 to 3 is seeing, do I even like this guy? I would say if everything else is really good and you're just seeing if you can build a connection, but everything else feels very aligned, he's a great guy, all that stuff, then I would say give it up to 6 dates. If after 4 or 5, like you're starting to get like repulsed and drained and you don't want to go out again, okay, so end it. But in general, I would give it a good 4 to 5, 6 dates, because you want to make sure you're relaxed. You want to make sure you're yourself. You want to make sure that you are, he's relaxed, he's himself, and you can actually see who you're dealing with in the dating, right? So Letting Go book was David Hawkins. It's called Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender. It's amazing. Amazing. It changed my life. Like I'm very critical of these books because they're often the same material, just reformulated, rehashed. And it doesn't mean it's bad. You got to choose what's right for you with those books. But this book, because the guy who wrote it really embodied what he said, it with such clarity that if you just at least read the first 3 chapters, which is the foundation of everything and the foundation of how I work, which I found very few therapists work this way, in the how do you actually process your feelings that are coming up, right? And not escape yourself. That's the biggest problem with underlying everything, is that we escape ourselves and we're not home here to even process and be with Hawkins, Hawkins, Hawkins. Sorry, not Hawking. You can get it on Amazon. Letting Go, David Hawkins, Hawkins. Yeah, power. Letting Go, the pathway to surrender. Sorry. Okay. So yes, you want to see that you're really seeing someone and knowing who they are and seeing if the attraction can grow. Okay. Oh, I like him, but I don't know where I stand in his life. I don't know what kind of relationship we are in. Should I ask? Yes, you should ask. Hello. I mean, I don't know how long you've been dating, but you definitely, this is where a third party is easy because they check in, right? But if you don't have a third party person in there, a third person in there to check in, so you can just, say that I think that you're the type of person that values open and honest communication. And he'll go, yes, of course. Yes, absolutely. So can I ask you something that's like a little bit hard to ask, but I feel like it's important just to make sure we're on the same page or we're going in the same direction. And that's really that I don't, I want to know what direction you think we're going in, or, if there's anything you feel like you want to talk about, or are you, I'm dating for marriage. I'm not sure if you are. Hopefully you know that by then already. But if that's not the case, if that is the case, but you're not sure where you stand, you can say, what are you thinking? Where do you see this is going? Sometimes it's hard to ask that, but if he's not bringing it up and you don't have a third party, you really want to know that. You really want to know so that you're not wasting your time. And also the anxiety just builds and builds and builds when that happens and you don't know. So the unknown then becomes nerve-wracking. And if he can't answer that and he says, well, I like to take things slow, I don't know, we'll see. Like if he's avoidant of that kind of question, that's giving you information. Anything you say, whatever he responds is giving you feedback. Everything's giving you feedback. So you can't ruin a relationship by gently, respectfully, not putting him on the spot, not pressuring, but by checking in for clarification about where you're both standing and where you're both going. If someone's going to run from that, then you're so much better off without him, and you're better off finding out now, because that's really like a commitment issue. So often if a guy has a commitment issue or is emotionally totally unintelligent, then he won't be able to be there. He won't be able to have that conversation. And so that will tell you, again, it might be that you're being very on the surface and you want to get deeper. So that's also another way to get deeper. Okay, last question. What if his politics are different, but he's so nice? Oh, I don't know. That's a loaded... Listen, it used to be when I was younger that it was no problem if your politics were different. You could respect each other's differences, but in this day and age, it's definitely been a challenge. And it's not just now... it's not just an opinion of what you do when you vote. It seems like it's a whole lifestyle and way of living. It's not just a vote. So, I think it's a personal decision. Ideally, we should be able to respect each other's differences, but if those differences in politics comes with differences in values, which is what I think it's become today on many levels, then it's really hard to not be aligned with values. Unless you have a conversation and you have this outlook that it's okay to have different opinions and different, as long as the values are similar in aligning with how you would live together as a couple, then I think it's okay. It's going to work. But if the values are different because of those political beliefs, then that's a problem. So stay values focused for dating. It's always important to stay focused on values rather than activities, hobbies, interests, politics. All those things are fun and fine and good, and it's good to do things together, but the values are what carries you through time. And values often don't change as fast, whereas hobbies and activities and interests do. So yes, it's sadly true and honest, I know. But you got to be honest, because if you get into a relationship and you're not honest, it's really a danger. It's really a danger down the line. You'll regret it. So I hope this is helpful, guys. And please feel free to DM me questions and I will continue to answer them. Have a great night.